What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Here we are with another reaction, and in this one we have 5 ways that British and American meal etiquette is very different. Before we jump into these 5 ways, if you guys happen to enjoy, don't forget to smash subscribe, give the video a thumbs up. Let's figure out the differences.
They hear your accent and you are American, their ears might prick up a bit thinking, here comes a payday. Hello, I'm Lawrence and I'm on a quest to uncover all of the memos that Britain and America lost in the pond, and one of those memos pertains to how we eat, dining etiquette. It's so important, especially when you're meeting your American family for the first time. I'm not talking from experience, maybe just a bit. Cultural differences around the dinner table don't just come down to the words we use, like chips versus fries, or the dishes that we serve. So, you know, America's pecan pie versus Britain's spotted dick. And that is an actual dessert, okay? Look it up, just not on your work computer. But it's also about some of the mechanisms that we use to get it into our mouths. I'm still talking about food. And also some of the customs and politeness norms that comes with the process of eating. And so without further crab rangoon, here are 5 ways that British and American eating etiquette is very, very different. Whether you call it cutlery, like we do in Britain, or silverware or flatware, or in this case plasticware, because, you know, we are rationing, we can all agree that without them, meal times would be very, very messy, especially in America where they put sauce on everything. But the real question is, how do we hold them?
True.
And this was part of my existential crisis after I moved to the United States, because I grew up learning the European style, or as it might be known here, the continental style. And when I say that, I'm referring to what is the official utensil etiquette, right? As opposed to the official American etiquette. And I'm going to show you, I think anyway, some of the differences. I personally don't have either etiquette completely down because, in my wife's words, I still eat like a toddler. But it mostly comes down to how we hold the fork. In Britain, you hold it kind of like that, I think.
Yes.
So you've got it, the end of it's touching your palm, and then you sort of grasp it with your thumb and your pointy finger, and it's there for pointing downward, right? And you stick it into the potatoes or the strawberries or the spotted dick. And notice it's in my left hand. That's going to be important in a moment. And in the other hand, you have your knife, right? Usually like this, with the pointy finger right there, and it's touching your palm again. So consistent on both hands, right? It's almost an extension of you. You're almost Wolverine, but from the United Kingdom or Europe. And then you do this, right? Usually at a lower level. You wouldn't be able to see it because my arms are off screen now, so I'll put them back there. And then you cut into the potatoes or the strawberries or the creamy spotted dick. I mean, you can come with custard. That's normal. And voila, put it in your mouth. There's nothing on this. This isn't that scene in Hook where they eat invisible food. It goes this way round, right? With the tines facing downward toward your tongue. In America, it's quite a bit different, right? So people will hold their fork like this with the tines facing upward. In other words, to kind of scoop up the food, right? So they'll do that. And actually sometimes, not every time, I mean, I'm sure there are people that circumvent all of the things you hear in this very list, but sometimes Americans won't even use a knife. Right? You'll just see them scoop something up, maybe a potato. We won't go through the entire list again. Put it in their mouth. If they want to cut up things in that way, sometimes they'll do it with the fork, right? Don't recommend it with plastic forks. You know, you can get through these pretty quickly if you do that. But if they do use a knife, they may turn the fork like this into the potato and then cut like that. You've got it there, you turn it back around, it's in your gob, and there you go. Bob's your uncle, you've got potatoes. And, you know, that's what a lot of Americans do. My father-in-law, though, did this. He had it like that, and like that. He'd turn it that way, and then like that. It sort of looked, I should tell you that my in-laws were cavemen. But it was through those very cavemen / dear relatives of my wife that I was first introduced to our next entry.
It was due to those cavemen / relatives of my wife. That's crazy. No, he's got that down to an art. Yes, I have watched shows like Only Fools and Horses. I would always see like Del Boy, like the way he ate. I would see him eat off the back of his fork, and I was always like, we eat like off the front. I mean, like he said, we scoop when it comes to like mashed potatoes or things you can scoop with the fork. We'll scoop it, and things you cut. I cut and then I eat, and then it's crazy. Or do I cut with my right? I don't remember which hand I cut with, but I'm pretty sure it's my right, and then I switch the fork back over to my right hand to eat, and then I'll cut. It's too much work. I'm doing too much work. When I seen the British way of doing it, I was like, well, wow. I know the British like heavily influenced America because America fought for its independence against the British. So, like, where did we get like our fork etiquette, our etiquette from? If they eat with their fork this way, why do we decide to turn it this way? Well, it interests me. I don't know where it came from, but it does interest me.
Yes, saying grace. This one is quite a tough entry in many ways because, in order to talk about it, I do have to somewhat generalise. And also, I don't have much data to back up what I'm about to say. It's more observationally driven, right? So when I lived in England for 27 years of my life, I don't say that with disdain. It was a good time. But in all that time, I don't really remember sitting down to a dinner function of any kind and really sort of saying grace beforehand. In other words, kicking off the meal with a sort of faith-based thanks. Now, part of that, and again, this is where the generalisation comes in, so bear with me, but in England, we tend to be less sort of like publicly open or just sort of even privately open, if you can be, among your family members about your religious beliefs. Whereas in the United States, I think people are more sort of proud of that, whatever their religious faith is. True. And so sometimes in some families, and this again could be regional, so I might well be generalising, but some families, including the extended relatives that I married into, I didn't marry them, I married into the family. Some families, and I gather maybe quite a lot of families here in the United States, particularly at special events like Thanksgiving or maybe even a homecoming of some kind, will sort of say grace before the meal, and there'll usually be one family member who stands up and says it on behalf of the entire group, and then you say amen and go about your way. For me, it was quite weird at first, I think. Now, I'm very respectful of other people's religious beliefs. I didn't really know what to do except just sort of sit there and then wait for it to be done, and then because I had half a mind on the turkey, so what are you going to do? And because I'm generalising here, it's important for me to say that this is my experience. I'd be very interested to hear other people's experiences, other Europeans' experiences of coming here and maybe having to say grace when they're not used to it, or Americans that don't themselves practice this. I've also heard it can go one step further here, where the whole family holds hands. I definitely draw the line at that, especially right now. The best way that I can put this for British people watching back home is, in football when, somebody dies and they have a minute's silence within the stadium, and then when the minute's silence is up, they all erupt in applause and all of that. It's kind of like that, minus the applause, it's just an amen. But the energy after that is great because you all want to tuck into your food. And because the energy's so good, that leads us on to our next entry.
I love that one because he's spot on, and my family is definitely one that says grace. My dad usually says it, but at one point or another, we've all said it growing up in our household. And so, the hand holding is real. Grab hands around the table, pray over the food before we eat, especially at Thanksgiving. Growing up at Thanksgiving, it used to be like everybody would have to say what they're thankful for, of course. So everybody would have to contribute to the prayer. Whereas as we've gotten more grown up, it's usually just like one person now that blesses over all the food, and then we all eat. But 100%, it's 100%. He didn't get it wrong, not one bit. Don't know how it is in the UK. He lived there for 27 years, so I think it's pretty safe to take his word. He did say this is regional in both areas. So I'm sure things are regional, so you might not be in that region or you might not do things that way, but he got my family down to a T. That's all I'll say.
Oh, I don't mind a bit of chatter and exceptionally weird noises. And at an American dinner table, you're going to get a lot of chatter. Usually, again, this is another generalisation, but on the whole, this is my experience. And I'm one of those people who doesn't think that Americans are always loud, as the stereotype dictates, but one exception tends to be in restaurants, right? I do hear the volume go up there as compared to Britain, where it feels like we're always battling with this war within ourselves to not air our dirty laundry in public. I'm not saying we don't talk at dinner tables, don't get me wrong. It feels observationally, once again, and again, there's no data on this. There's not somebody going around measuring the decibels in every restaurant in either country, especially right now because they're all closed. But that's my general experience of it. Now, I could be getting thrown off course a little bit here because, you know, my wife's family are really loud. Don't tell them I said that, although this is a public video. They know it's true. I've told them before, and that's why we've not spoken in a year. But here in America, you might be in a restaurant, sitting down with just one other person, trying to have a quiet, intimate conversation. And to your right, there's this really loud family with a 5-year-old running around with a stupid hat on that he got from the restaurant, right? So they're further enhancing the volume of said family. And then on the other side, there's clearly what is a date happening. And the woman is just sitting there quietly, looking quite glum, while the man very audibly and haphazardly talks about all of the Fortune 500 companies he's worked for. And she stares into space, presumably thinking of all the ways that she can get out of there. But on the other hand, once you do get used to that sort of raised volume, it does add to the atmosphere, you know. And if you're already in a good mood and you enter somewhere where, you know, thousands, oh, that's a huge restaurant, hundreds maybe, where there's lots of people and they're in a good mood and it just sort of bounces off the walls, you know. But speaking of restaurants, that brings us on to our next entry.
Yeah, I feel like the table chatter definitely at an American table, there is going to be a lot of table chatter. Yeah, we do love to talk. I'll say that. I'm not a big talk. When you put food in front of me, I got one mission. I'm not worried about conversations going on. Don't care. I'm about finishing that food because I'm hungry and there's food in front of me. So there's one mission in my brain. But there is a lot of talk around the table, maybe around me, but I'm stuffing my face, so I'm not contributing too much until I finish. And yeah, I feel like it's a lot, like you said, so much where so in the UK, you guys prefer, hey, let's not talk as much. We not going to air our dirty laundry, kind of keep that within you. Okay. Server etiquette. I'm excited for this one. I've seen this like done by so many YouTubers, so I'm excited to hear his take on it. Servers.
My heart does go out to all of the servers and anybody else to whom this applies around the world who can't go into work right now. And a huge thank you to delivery servers who are able to keep people fed who might need it. But, you know, back in peacetime when the restaurants were still open, there was quite a marked difference between, you know, British servers and American servers and the way they sort of conduct themselves at the dinner table while you're eating your dinner. In Britain, they're quite standoffish, and I know that's just a trait of British people in general, I get that, but they don't have the incentive, which we'll talk about in a minute, to constantly be coming back to your table and seeing how you're doing, checking if you need a refill on that water, because you probably won't get one anyway. I'm joking, of course you'll get a free refill on your water, just nothing else. Often, know this, if you want their attention, you're going to have to get their attention yourself, and that includes when it comes time to pay the bill. Whereas in the United States, and each restaurant has its different policy on this, you know, the waiting staff will come to your table every 5 minutes usually just to see how you're doing. And it seemingly doesn't matter if you're in the middle of a seriously one-sided conversation about the Fortune 500 companies you've worked for. They will still come over and go, hey, what's up? How's that tenderloin working out for you? And there are a couple of big reasons, I think, that American serving staff do this. Firstly, the company often dictates it. It's seen as a kind of data-driven way of, you know, having good customer service. But having good customer service could well dictate this.
The tip.
Have they tried anti?
Factual. That tip is huge. I mean, especially for the servers here in the U.S. Because they're not being paid livable wage, or being paid even less than minimum wage by the actual company, which puts all the responsibility on the customer to tip them, or they're not getting paid good. And so I think that's absolutely frustrating as a customer to actually have to like tip 15 to 20% of the meal. It makes the meal that much more expensive, which is already more expensive than if I would have stayed home. And I would stay home. But I have a wife who likes to go out and likes to eat and likes to be out of the house and have to tip. I can't stand tipping. I truly and genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, cannot stand tipping. Because I'm fully capable of getting everything myself if I don't have to tip. Like, I'll just get it to go, and then I'll take it home and eat it. But That's the culture here. And then, yeah, in the UK, I guess they don't have to worry about that. So they're not at your table every kind of 5 to 10 minutes asking you how things going, making sure you don't need a refill, which I do enjoy to an extent in the US, right? I don't mind, yeah, because I drink soda fast. So, yeah, I do need a refill. And then when they're taking plates away that I'm done with, it does make more room for the table. So it is helpful in a sense, but sometimes when you are in a conversation, they keep coming, it does get annoying at times. So I can understand why Brits maybe wouldn't like that way.
He freeze with that. No. Well, he might go back to his milk phase eventually. Yeah. Yeah. So the dreaded tip, or at least it was dreaded to me when I first moved to America. Actually, when I landed at Philadelphia Airport, this is the first time I remember having to sort of navigate the American tipping system because I bought a drink at a bar at that very airport. And having bought the Jack Daniels, or 6, I'm not a good flyer at this. I turned to the gentleman next to me and I asked him, how does tipping work? And, he very, very kindly offered, well, whatever the amount is on your receipt, just give them 85% of that, and that's about good. That's standard. That was a lie.
That's how I feel. 85% is not 85, but that's how I feel sometimes.
And I ended up almost bankrupt. Firstly, in the United States, regardless of the amount, it's very much expected that you do tip because that's basically how servers make their wage. And the standard amount that you're expected to tip is the complete opposite of 85%. It's 15%, right? But if you thought it was good service, or just to be sort of a good person, really, you can definitely tip more than that. I typically tip. Just try saying that after 6 whiskeys. I did that night. I typically tip, particularly if I'm on a trip, 20%, or I might even round up to 21 if it kind of requires it. Tipping of some kind is expected here. In the UK, if you're thinking of going there, firstly, don't do that right now, but if after all this blows over you are fancying going to the UK, then you're not required to tip at all.
Love that.
Right? I mean, people get paid a sort of living wage more or less for being a server in the UK. It's good practice. If you want to do that, you certainly can. 10% is recommended. And growing up in the UK, I never really did tip all that often, I must say. I think if I were to live there now, I probably would do so a bit more. It's not expected. I mean, servers aren't going to expect you to tip. Although, if they hear your accent and you are American, their ears might prick up a bit, thinking, here comes a payday, right? Whereas it's the other way round here. As soon as servers hear a British accent, they must be filled with dread. Or maybe that's not true. Maybe servers hear a British accent and think, he's ripe for manipulation. I've had some bad experiences. That's it for this episode. Thank you for joining me today. And, it's kind of sad that I couldn't practice a lot of these things for the video, except for the knives and forks, and those were the last plastics I have. As ever, a reminder that you can keep up with me and all my stupid ramblings on Twitter at LostInThePondUS. And if you've not had a chance to do so, why not subscribe to my channel so that my videos don't get lost in the pond? As ever, a big shout out to all my patrons who make spoons like this one possible. If you would like to become a patron of Lost in the Pond,
I absolutely love that. Yeah, tipping, I told you how I feel about tipping. It's diabolical. In the UK, if y'all get paid a livable wage, I probably wouldn't tip. Just because, I hate tipping. And then you guys get paid good. So, I probably would refrain from it. But here in the US, first of all, we need to look at these companies and these freaking restaurants and corporations and be like, y'all need to pay them livable wages. Y'all need to stop putting responsibility on us customers. We're already coming and paying overpriced for the meals. And now you want us to give even more money, which is absolutely ridiculous. But that's a talk for another day. Let me know how you guys feel about tipping or about any of the 5 things that he mentioned in this video. Agree, disagree, who does it better, US, UK, on certain issues. That's all we have. If you enjoyed, please don't forget to subscribe, give the video a thumbs up, and check out that next one. I'll see you guys next time.